everyone, I'm the Black Shadow, and welcome back to another episode for Top 5, the series where we take a specific topic from the world of Dune Imperium, and I give you my tips and tricks to help you to improve your game. We're in the midst of looking at the various leaders for the Bloodlines Expansion added into Dune Imperium Uprising, and today's topic is going to be a fun one, and that is the wonderful and lovely Liet Kynes. So, Liet is one of multiple leaders now that have been formerly cards in Imperium Roads of either this game or the previous game, Dune Imperium Normal, and have now become leaders. Liet was a bit of a surprise pick for me in a way to come out for this, but is a very, very funky leader. 3 pip complexity and definitely deserving of it. There's a lot going on here. There's some real significant upsides and some really cool stuff that she does. One thing I'll definitely give Paul & Co. With Bloodlines, there are several leaders that have quite a big impact on changing how the game state is and how it's processed. Liet, though, does have one really, really big problem, though, which is something that she has to work around. But overall, I think a really fun leader and should make for a good video here. So let's have a look at Liet's leader abilities, and we'll start off with her passive, which is a really, really big part for her, and probably what makes Liet so special, and that is Arrakis Planetologist. Ignore the influence requirement for Seitch. This is really big. It makes sense with Liet, obviously, very much in tune with the Fremen. But yeah, this is a enormous buff. Seitch is the space down here, which is a really, really important space in Uprising, as it allows you to gain access both to mega hooks in order to get hold of worms, and is also the only space on the board that lets you detonate the shield wall here. And this is important because if there are combats around that are behind the shield wall, Refinery, Arakeen, and Basin, if the wall's up, you can't use any worms. So Seitch is a big choke point for a lot of battle potential. People trying to get worms in, double combat rewards, and do lots of good stuff. Normally, you need 2 influence to visit here with the Fremen. Liet says, I don't care, I'm in with these dudes, and she can go there first action if she so wants, which is really, really big. There's a couple of big points to note for this. So first off, as far as just general as a combat space, Seitch is one of the best. Is the only place outside liver supplies that lets you generate water as well. Water, of course, is a very powerful resource, letting you go to these the maker spots, picking up spice. Research station as well is another big subject of this. But there's also a few intrigues that also require water for a variety of effects as well. So being able to go here straight away is really good. And again, just having a space, anytime in Dune Imperium you have a space that you have specific access that you have and no one else does, even for just a little while, is a huge leverage point to have. It also means that Liet is usually going to be pretty battle heavy in the beginning game because she's almost always got access to deployment spots that no one else can block. Even if everyone goes to Arakeen, Refinery, even if Desert Tactics goes, like, you've still got this spot here that generates a troop and lets you deploy as well, that she's got guaranteed access to, or I should say exclusive access, maybe is a better word for it, at the start of the game. So usually that's going to be a really big thing for her. The other thing that it has is a big impact on the overall game state, is because Liet can get to Seitch without having to worry about Fremen influence, it means it's a bit of a problem for everyone else, because a normal game route that people would like to take where possible, especially going combat route, especially let's say we got Muad'Dib in the second seat here, for example, is round 1, he'd like to go Desert Tactics or Fremkit, and then round 2, look to go to hit there again to get to influence with the Fremen, and then hit Seitch straight away to get his worms, to get his make hooks, so we can start getting worms into combats. Well, if Liet Kynes is acting before you all the time, you got a problem, because alright, you might be able to get hold of that influence, but Liet can just park recon here. And there's nothing you can do. You can't get those mega hooks. You can't get worms generated. You can't get your passive effect active. You can't be doubling combat awards. And so Liet has a really big impact on a lot of these combat heavy leaders that are very reliant on getting mega hooks as soon as possible and using that power to double these big combat awards, because Liet Kynes can very easily and effectively stall them and block them. And it's not exactly a bad thing that Liet's going to these places anyways. The water's really good for her, the troops as well is really good for her, and it's just a really powerful spot to hit anyway. So the likes of these battle leaders are gonna hope to gosh that there isn't Liet Kynes out there, because it will inevitably cause some problems for them. Then we get to the second part of Arrakis Planetologist, and this is also really big. You summon no sandworms. Liet Kynes has no ability to summon sandworms in the entire game. This is a big point on all sorts of manners. But for each one that you would summon, because you still can get mega hooks and you can still choose to take sandworms, you get a spice, a card trash, and an intrigue. And you are also able to do this, even if the conflict is protected by a shield wall, you're still able to do this as well, which is a notable buff for Liet Kynes. So, not having access to sandworms is a problem. One of the big snowball mechanics of Uprising in general is being able to get sandworms going, and with someone like these really big combats, being able to double the rewards on them and just print victory points and influence and resources is a significant buff, and it's how you get like these big combat snowballs. Liet can't do this because she can never summon any sandworms, which does present problems later on in the game, especially once you start getting to these tier 3 situations. And you get these combats that have got like tons of influence, or ones that give you victory points on acquisition. You can never double of this. Like, you can never get 2 victory points out of this, and then some additional, maybe with spy for calling anything like that. Everyone else does have the ability to do that. So that does mean that as the game goes on, that is going to be a problem when those combat rewards do escalate. But the offside of that isn't that bad. For each one that you would have got, you get a spice, you get a trash, and you get an intrigue. So effectively what you're doing, you know, if you want to look at it this way, is instead of get the 2 spice or the worm, effectively what you're doing here is you're paying a spice to get an intrigue and a card trash, which is still pretty decent. That's a nice reward for that. No question about that. And of course, being able to like trash like that very reliably is really good. It lets you do a lot of decorating. Those intrigues as well are going to be really good for you, and really important for Liet Kynes, again, because you don't have the ability to double those combat rewards. You are going to be a bit more reliant on intrigues to kind of give you options, whether it's by scorings specifically with points or giving you bumps with factions, anything like that. You need something to supplant the fact that you just cannot double any rewards. One thing you're going to have to be pretty mindful, though, is that if you are consistently hitting the likes of Hagar Basin and Deep Desert, well, it's going to get pretty expensive after a while, and it's going to be a huge drain on water as you go. Now, you might say, well, it's not so big a deal. Like, I've got guaranteed access to Seitch. I can just keep going to Seitch and hitting these ways. And I guess that, in a sense, is true, but bear in mind, as the game goes on, other people are going to gradually get access to Seitch Tabber, and if you just keep going here and here, like, you can sort of do this, but then what are you doing about faction bumps? How are you generating money to go Swordmaster High Council? Like, kind of what are you doing with that? So you can't just rely on this for the whole game. You do need to eventually diversify what it is you're trying to do. So you've got to be a little bit cautious of that. Well, there is probably a bit more to talk about that. We'll go into Liet's ring next here. Judge of the Change. So, as you send your ring to a space on the board, depending on where you send it, you do get an additional reward. If you send it to a city space, you get a Solari. If you send it to a maker space or a spice trade space, you get a spice. And if you send it to a council space after having get on 2 events with the Emperor, you can actually pick up a water, which is pretty nice. But you're having to get to influence with the Emperor, which does take a little while sometimes, although it does lend itself to an interesting strategy. I think the Liet Kynes will talk a little bit more shortly speaking. Definitely there is value getting that water, and it's another way of supplanting the fact of not having to go Seitch the whole time to keep hitting these maker spaces and try and get the most out of Planetologist. It also means as well that if you send your signet ring to, say, Hagar Basin, for example, and you take the worm, you're basically negating the spice that you'd normally pay for effectively for the trash and intrigue, you're getting that on the house, so it helps to circumvent that issue there as well. So definitely there's a lot of decent stuff going on there with Liet Kynes. It also means it's a ring you very much want to make sure you're playing whenever you see it. You don't want to be drawing that out of turn. Like if you're on your last action, you got Arakeen and you pull your ring, it's a pretty bad feeling. So you do need to be a little bit watchful where it is in your deck and make sure you're not passing up with those, because those resources are pretty significant. I think the only thing I would note, however, is that if you are sending Liet's ring to the council areas to pick up that water, that is obviously good, but that can make access otherwise a bit awkward. It means if you're sending a ring, you're not hitting many other city spots. If you've still got your daggers as well in your deck because you haven't managed to trash them yet for some reason, like what are they doing? So while obviously there's a lot of rewards, that I think at that point you've got to have made sure that you've got a decent deck that's pretty well balanced, so you're not kind of compromising yourself either access-wise somewhere, or that you're, because you're sending your ring up there to pick up the water, you've still got ways of hitting these spaces reliably and getting a lot of value out of there. So just be a little bit careful about that. It can be a little bit easy to just try and do it because the water is the most valuable resource, but you don't want to mess up with like kind of the tempo of your play as well, and just disrupting your entire round for a loose water, which you end up can't using because the space got blocked. So next up, let's talk about seat positions that look good for Liet Kynes. So the fact that she doesn't need any Fremen influence at all means that she can kind of go a bit anywhere, realistically. The fact as well that she has the ability to block other leaders that might be going very heavy for worms as well does mean that the likes of kind of seat 4 and seat 3 look pretty good. Usually, if you're going Fremen and you're trying to get to the worms, you're going here, and especially second seat as well. Being able to, go fraction round 1, faction round 2, Seitch. So it means you don't have to worry about people getting the line, get in the way of that. You can always get to Seitch here as well. But I have a funny feeling as well that because seats 3 and 4 look good because of not being blocked at Seitch, it also means that Liet probably is a very strong pick in seat 1 as well, for basically the same reasons. Seat 1 is somewhere where you feel kind of obligated sometimes to go to Fremen for the bump, but finding the actual second one to get to Seitch to get in the way of player 2 can be difficult sometimes. Liet, of course, doesn't care. And I think seat 1, Liet, if it comes down to that, I think is a really potentially potent spot, because you can send your faction to somewhere else. You can go get a contract. You can go deliver supplies maybe and just absolutely monopolize water on the board. You can go to accept contracts as well, maybe go Arakeen, whatever you want to do, because you can just hit Seitch straight away. You could even, there is not impossible for you just to go Seitch round 1 and then Hagar Basin immediately afterwards. There's no bonus spice there, admittedly, but it might not make a big difference if you're sending your ring there. So you're still generating stuff, you're still doing good things. If there's a dagger in your starting hand, you can trash that straight away as well. It's about more for Liet, I think, being reactive and especially proactive in what you're doing, and just thinking that when you're going to pick her, just kind of mapping out what you think your first couple of rounds are going to look like, and especially once you see other leaders on the board, kind of try and identify, okay, who's we going really heavy for hooks here? I need to make sure that I can try and stall Muad'Dib or Duncan, Idaho, and making sure that if I can stall them for a round or two from hitting Seitch and getting to worms and getting their maker hooks, it's going to hurt them a heck of a whole lot, but not completely compromise your own game just to go ahead and do that. So, section 5 is the wildcard section. As mentioned earlier with Liet Kynes, the fact that she is unable to double any combat rewards is inherently a problem for her, and it means that towards the back end of the game, Liet is not able to have these hugely explosive point scores as some of the leaders can with battles. The likes of Muad'Dib, for example, can go to Imperial Basin, and sometimes they can score 3, 4, sometimes 5 points just straight off a combat, and that's something that Liet Kynes simply cannot do. So you're going to need to try and think of other ways that you can go ahead and acquire a couple of points. But that means that you go heavy after a faction, he might not do otherwise, with the Fremen or the Emperor perhaps. That can definitely be an option for you. Of course, there are a couple of cards dotted about in the Imperium deck that let you draw and generate points as well, with maybe alliances, whether that's through sending spice out with Smuggler's Haven, stuff like that. That's something for you to also kind of keep in consideration as well. And of course, if you're hitting these spaces, you're going to be drawing a lot of intrigues, and that can give you some options as well, directly with maybe endgame points, again, getting faction bumps, whether it's with, the likes of like opportunism, using a couple of bumps and money to get a point there. Street stockpiling, also another good shout for you. It's something that you're not going to necessarily know when you're picking Liet Kynes, how you're going to get 0.9 and 0.10, but hopefully over the course of the game it will kind of present you in options and ways and means of doing that, so that's going to be pretty good for you. Other thing as well for Liet Kynes as well is the fact that she will probably be rolling in a fair amount of spice. So it does mean that techs are going to be pretty important for you. The likes of dropships, obviously, Panopticon, and all the usual stuff are definitely going to be really powerful for you. But do expect there to be some competition for that. If you can find one or two things as well to help you in the combats that you do go for, that's important. Liet can sometimes fall into the realm of a bit of kind of spoiler, of kind of fighting in a fight to stop someone getting a big, massive double battle point. Again, we bring up the likes of like Spice, right, for example. That is always a problem comment that comes up for Liet, because she's not got anywhere near as much to gain as anyone else does. So if this comes up in sort of round 5, round 6, you might sometimes feel compelled to get involved just to stop someone else from really getting the most out of that and generating a ton of victory points in this. So that can be a little awkward sometimes. So you got to try and keep yourself with some garrison, with some options to act and enact whenever it is that you're necessary to do so. The one other thing that Liet is also pretty good at as well is playing the contract game. It's not something necessarily that you might think of initially when you first see here, but because of the fact that she is able to generate spice fairly easily with both her ring abilities, as well as the fact that she has a lot of access to water, it means that all these harvest contracts that are out in the contract pile, she's pretty good at completing, because she can just generate these from going to deep desert and such, and no one else can really block them. So there's a lot of money that you can generate from these, some spy access as well. It's a great way of getting your way to an early sword master or high council as well. Maybe go to high council and pick up those techs a little bit cheaper. And of course, you do want to get that to Emperor influence as well to help give the ring more options. So hitting dutiful service just to pick up those contracts in the first place does seem inherently synergistic. And even going and accept contract the ring isn't the worst. You're still picking up the loose spice as you go for it, which isn't terrible. So there's definitely some obvious routes for Liet to go for. But do expect though that if you're going to take Liet Kynes immediately and there's an obvious big harvest contract out there, don't be surprised if someone decides they're going to go ahead and snipe that away from you, because they know the power that it gives to you. It's a bit like with Staban Tuek when he's in the game as well. People know that he has some obvious huge upsides, to the point where people will sometimes take moves and options that they would normally take just purely to deny those, and Liet can sometimes fall victim of that as well. So just be a little bit cautious of that. Try not to make your moves completely obvious at the start of the game where possible. But hey, if they let you get that nice, easy harvest contract, I mean, it's not your fault. So overall thoughts for Liet Kynes then. While she is a bit of a complicated leader and definitely requires a bit of different approach to how you kind of take on the game, I do think she's at the very least solid, if not pretty darn strong. Just being able to get access to Seitch Tabber immediately is such a big use here, and lets you just have a lot of flexibility on the board that no one else does at the start of the game. That's something you can definitely look to go ahead and leverage. It also means that she's got a lot of use out of the Imperium deck as well. Any cards that give her kind of resources complement her nicely. You just got to bear in mind that look for a power card or two as well when you're going for this, because she has inherently a lot of trash. So you can get rid of those daggers and the cheap dunes and whatever else. You can get those out of your deck very quickly, which means that if you can purchase a power card or two, you're going to see a lot more. So the likes of Steersman, the likes of Charm Demands, anything like that, any really strong power cards, Liet can get tons of value out for. So lots to do with here, Liet. Definitely advise giving a spin. I mean, she's a fun leader. Probably expect your first game or two to be a little rough, though, because you do have to make some adjustments to how you generally play the game. But once you get used to her and kind of used to Bloodlines as a whole, yeah, I think she's a lot of fun. Overall, that's going to do it for us here, though. So, very much for watching and listening as we continue our dive through the various leaders for Bloodlines. As always, if you've got any thoughts of any other ideas and kind of rough strategies for Liet, feel free to put them through in the comment section below. It's always nice to see some of them. Everyone's got different ways of approaching these games, and everyone thinks of something that someone else didn't think of. And it's always nice to do a bit of theory crafting. And of course, as well, if you find this video is useful, all the other guides we've done over the course of time, then please feel free to follow the channel. Like the video, all that lovely good stuff. It makes our lives a lot easier. At the end of the day, if you guys aren't here watching this, I wouldn't be here making it, truthfully. So thank you much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you all in the next video.